The late afternoon sun hung low over the Colorado plains, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt as my bicycle tires hummed against the weathered road. I had pedaled out from Denver that morning, chasing the empty promise of escape. 3 years of cubicle walls and fluorescent lights had finally worn grooves into my sanity, and the cycling app on my phone had suggested this route through the eastern plains as scenic and moderately challenging. My name is Liam Grayson, and at 34, I was finally learning that escape sometimes just means trading one kind of prison for another, though I hadn't yet understood how literally that would prove true. The fields on either side stretched endlessly toward the horizon, golden wheat swaying in a breeze that carried the sweet rot of harvest season, and I had maybe 12 miles left before the designated turnaround point when I saw the first one, a figure standing motionless in the dirt at the edge of the property, roughly human in shape, but assembled from what looked like salvaged lumber and moldy canvas. I slowed, heart suddenly loud in my chest, because even from 30 feet away, I could tell that the proportions were wrong, the arms too long, the head tilted at an angle that suggested a broken neck, and the Scarecrow was facing directly toward me, toward the direction I was traveling, its stitched-on burlap face somehow conveying the impression of absolute, patient attention. I told myself it was just a farmer's crude creation, a joke, a lanky teenager's idea of rural humor, and I pedaled forward, but the road curved slightly, and I saw another and another, standing in a rough line, perhaps 50 feet apart, each identical in posture and orientation, all facing the same direction I was headed, and the last one wore what looked disturbingly like a real human hand hanging limp from its wooden wrist. And I pedaled faster, without wanting to admit why. The sun had dipped another inch toward the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and stale oranges, when I finally allowed myself to coast and breathe, and I realized with a creeping wrongness that I had not passed a single vehicle since leaving the highway, not one truck or sedan or tractor. And the silence beyond my own gasping was so complete, it felt like pressure against my eardrums. I looked back over my shoulder at the road I had traveled, expecting to see the Scarecrows shrinking into the distance. But instead, I saw only empty fields, golden and swaying. And then I looked ahead, and my blood went cold because there they were again, still facing me, still spaced in that terrible regular pattern, as if they had somehow relocated themselves while I wasn't watching, as if they had simply walked ahead and resumed their positions. My water bottle rattled against the frame as my hands trembled on the handlebars, and I absolutely knew, that this was wrong in some fundamental way my rational mind couldn't articulate. But still I pedaled forward because the turnaround point was only 8 more miles, and I told myself I just needed to keep moving, just needed to stay calm. And then one of the Scarecrows raised its long wooden arm and pointed directly at me, and the movement was so fluid, so biological, that I nearly crashed into the drainage ditch before I could correct my course. I was breathing too fast now, my vision narrowing to a bright point of terror, and I understood on some primal level that I was being herded, that the road was not my escape route, but my runway, and that something at the end of it was waiting for me with a patience I could only imagine in my worst nightmares. The turnaround point marker came into view as the last light bled from the sky. A faded wooden signpost advertising a farm stand that had been closed for years, its produce bins empty and gray with neglect. But I didn't stop because I understood with horrible clarity that there was nothing to turn back to anymore, that the road behind me had become as fixed and unchangeable as the road ahead. The Scarecrows had changed in the deepening twilight. Their burlap faces somehow more defined, their wooden joints less stiff, and I watched in frozen horror as one of them turned its head to follow my passage, the motion so smooth and predatory that it defied every rational explanation I tried to force upon it. My phone had lost signal 40 minutes ago. 5 bars, then nothing. Just that empty oval where the connection icon should be. And the GPS had frozen on a loading screen that never progressed. And I realized that I had been pedaling for what felt like hours, but the sun had barely moved, as if time itself had thickened around me like cooling honey, trapping me in an eternal approaching dusk. A truck appeared suddenly around the bend ahead, its headlights cutting through the gloom, and I nearly wept with relief until I saw that it was not moving, that it sat idling in the middle of the road with its doors hanging open and its engine rumbling and no driver visible anywhere. And as I approached, I saw that the driver's seat was soaked in something dark and wet that reflected the dying light like a mirror. And I swerved around it without stopping, my bicycle fishtailing on the gravel shoulder as something that might have been a scream tore itself from my throat. The fields had started to change around me. Where there had been wheat, there was now something taller and darker, something that moved against the wind in patterns that suggested intention, and the Scarecrows had multiplied, their numbers doubling and tripling until they lined both sides of the road in an endless corridor of watching figures. And they had all begun to lean toward me as I passed, their burlap faces somehow smiling. The air grew colder with each rotation of my wheels, a chill that had nothing to do with the setting sun, and everything to do with the understanding that was slowly crystallizing in my mind, like ice forming across still water. Each Scarecrow wore something different now, a fragment of cloth, a rusted piece of jewelry, a scrap of fabric in a color I recognized from my own wardrobe. And the final figure in the line held my missing water bottle in its wooden grip, the one I had definitely not dropped, the one I had clipped back into its cage not 15 minutes before. And when I looked down at my own bike, I saw that the bottle was indeed gone, had been gone, was now in the possession of something that should not have been able to take it. I stopped pedaling and coasted to a halt in the middle of the road, the silence rushing in to fill the space where my heartbeat should have been. And I stared at the bottle in the Scarecrow's grip and tried to remember when I had last seen it. But the memory kept slipping away like a fish in dark water, and I realized with dawning horror that my memories of the last hour were dissolving, even as I tried to hold them, being replaced by static, by white noise, by the sensation of cotton filling my skull. The Scarecrow set the bottle down gently in the road before me, an offering, a demonstration of capability that chilled me more than any threat could have. And when I looked up at its face, I saw that the burlap had been stitched into an expression I knew, an expression I had worn in the mirror on mornings when the world felt too heavy to bear. And I understood that it was not mimicking humanity, but reflecting it, studying it, learning it from the inside out. The wind picked up suddenly, carrying with it the smell of turned earth and rotting vegetables and something else, something chemical and sweet like formaldehyde, and the fields erupted in movement as thousands of shapes rose from the wheat to join their brothers, and I was the only thing standing between them and wherever they wanted to go. And I got back on my bicycle and pedaled into the darkness because staying still was no longer an option, had perhaps never been an option, had perhaps been the trap all along. My legs had stopped working somewhere in the last mile. Pure adrenaline had taken over, and my body had become a vehicle for terror alone, pedaling mechanically while my mind screamed at me to abandon the bike and run. But run where? Run in which direction, when the world had become a maze designed specifically to trap me? The road began to descend into a valley I had not noticed before, and at the bottom of it sat a farmhouse that looked like every farmhouse I had ever seen in old photographs from the Depression era. Its porch sagging, its windows dark, its chimney exhaling a thin column of smoke that rose straight up into the windless air in a column of gray against the purple sky. I stopped at the edge of the property without meaning to, my bicycle tipping onto its side as I stumbled off, and I stood there shaking as the farmhouse door opened and a light clicked on inside and a figure appeared in the doorway. A man, I thought at first. But then the light from inside caught his face, and I saw that it was not a man at all, but something wearing a man like a costume, its features too smooth and too symmetrical, and its eyes reflecting the light in a way that human eyes simply do not reflect. And it smiled at me with too many teeth arranged in rows like a shark's mouth, and it spoke my name in a voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. And I learned that it knew everything about me, every fear I had ever had, every weakness, every private shame that I had buried so deep, I had almost convinced myself it didn't exist. The scarecrows had gathered at the edge of the farmhouse yard now, dozens of them, standing in a perfect semicircle with their arms raised and their burlap faces tilted upward as if awaiting instruction. And the thing in the doorway extended one hand toward me, and I understood with crystal certainty that it had built them, that it had built this entire road and this entire night, and probably my entire life specifically to bring me to this moment. And when it smiled its terrible smile and said, "Welcome home, Liam," the ground beneath my feet began to soften, and I realized that the field I was standing in was not a field at all, but a mass grave, and the scarecrows were not pointing at me, but at the ground beneath me, at the thousands of hands that were just beginning to reach up through the soil. And the thing in the doorway was not the farmer, but the harvest. And I had been the crop all along. The hands that emerged from the earth were not decomposed, not skeletal, not the dry bones I had expected from a grave. Instead, they were fresh, pink with life, nails still trimmed, wedding rings still glinting on appropriate fingers, and they grasped at the air with a hunger that transcended death, with a need that went beyond the physical. And I stumbled backward toward the road, only to find that the scarecrows had closed their semicircle behind me, had moved without sound, without warning, had formed a wall of wooden limbs and burlap faces that left no gap wide enough for even my thin frame to squeeze through. The thing in the farmhouse doorway was walking toward me now, each step too even, too measured, like a metronome keeping perfect time, and as it drew closer, I could see that its clothing was made of something organic, something that moved with breath, something that I realized with revulsion was skin, human skin stitched together into the shape of a farmer's overalls and flannel shirt, and around its neck hung a necklace of wedding rings that clinked softly with each step, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all waiting to be added to with mine. I screamed then, a raw animal sound that tore itself from somewhere deeper than my throat, and I threw myself at the wall of scarecrows, clawing at their wooden frames, pulling at their burlap wrappings, and one of them came apart in my hands, revealing not straw, but hair, long human hair braided into the shape of its body, and another released clouds of ash when I knocked it over, ash that settled on my skin like snow, ash that smelled of burning cotton, and something else, something I recognized from the crematorium where we had scattered my mother's ashes 8 years ago. The thing that wore my mother's face was standing right in front of me now, close enough to touch, and its eyes were wrong. They were her eyes, yes, her exact shade of tired blue, but they held a knowledge in them that she had never possessed, a knowledge of things that happened in darkness, and when it opened its mouth to speak again, I heard her voice come out in that dry leaf whisper, telling me that I had been cycling toward this moment my entire life, that every wrong turn and missed connection had been a step on this path, and that the rings around its neck had once belonged to people just like me, people who had tried to run, people who had thought they could escape. And I fell to my knees in the ash and the dirt, and I sobbed because I understood now that escape was never the point, that the Scarecrows were not the hunters, but the markers, the boundary posts of a territory that had been claimed since before my birth. I woke on the road with sunlight streaming across my face and birds singing in the wheat fields on either side of me. And for a blissful moment, I thought it had all been a dream, a hallucination brought on by dehydration and exhaustion. But then I sat up and saw the Scarecrow standing 10 feet away, facing me with that terrible patient attention, and its burlap face was somehow different now, more detailed, more expressive. And it wore clothes that looked exactly like the clothes I had been wearing when I fell asleep, and it was holding a bicycle helmet that was identical to the one I had removed before collapsing on the grass. I ran without thinking, leaving the bicycle, leaving the helmet, running back down the road toward Denver, and I ran for what felt like hours until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, and I collapsed on the shoulder of a highway I didn't recognize. But a truck driver stopped and offered me a ride, and I made it back to the city by midnight, and I spent 3 weeks in the hospital recovering from extreme exhaustion and mild hypothermia, according to the doctors. And I told everyone who asked that I had gotten lost on a back road and panicked, and no one questioned this because it sounded reasonable and normal and human. But I know what I know now. I know that the thing in the farmhouse is patient, so patient, because it has had an eternity of harvests. And I know that the Scarecrows are not just watching, but waiting. And I know that the road has no end, because it is not a road at all, but a cycle. And every morning when I wake up, I check my legs to make sure they still work. And I check my reflection to make sure my face is still my own. And sometimes, late at night, I hear the wind outside my window. And it sounds like dry leaves skittering across pavement. And I know it is not the wind. I know it is the sound of something speaking my name in a voice that knows me better than I know myself. Last week, I found a burlap scrap in my coat pocket with 2 holes cut for eyes and stitching across the mouth that said, "Stay," in letters made of thread. And I burned it immediately, but I can still feel it sometimes. The weight of it, the patience of it, waiting for me to get back on the bicycle, waiting for me to find the road again. And every time I close my eyes, I see the Scarecrows standing in their endless line, facing the same direction. And I know now that they are not facing where I am going, but where I have already been. Every version of me that has made this journey before, and the reason they are all identical is because they are all me. The thing in the farmhouse is not hunting, but collecting, gathering each failed attempt into its terrible family. And the next time the road calls, and it will call, I know it will call, I will get on the bicycle again, and I will pedal toward the horizon, because some roads, once you start down them, have no exit, and some harvests never end, and some cyclists never stop riding, not because they choose not to, but because the road chooses for them. And the last thing I will ever see before the ground softens beneath my feet will be the scarecrows raising their wooden arms in welcome, and the thing in the doorway smiling its shark-toothed smile, and the hands reaching up from the soil to pull me down into the darkness where the wheat grows tall and the harvest never ends, and the scarecrows stand eternal, watching, waiting, facing the direction we are all inevitably headed. The therapist they assigned me at the hospital was a kind woman named Dr. Chen, who listened patiently to my fragmented story about getting lost and seeing strange things in the fields, and she nodded in all the right places and wrote "acute stress reaction" on her pad and prescribed me pills that made the colors slightly brighter and the sounds slightly muffled and the dreams almost manageable, almost unable to reach me in the daylight hours when I needed to function. But the pills don't work at night, not really. They just delay the inevitable. Last Tuesday, I woke at 3 a.m. with the taste of turned earth on my tongue, and the certainty that something had been standing at the foot of my bed, something patient and wooden and waiting. And when I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone, the screen displayed a map with a single route traced in red from my apartment straight through downtown Denver and out into the eastern plains, ending at a farmhouse that I knew, that I had seen, that I would see again, and the route pulsed gently like a heartbeat, like a countdown, like a promise. I deleted the map and threw the phone across the room and sat in the darkness breathing until dawn arrived with its false promises of safety and normalcy. But even as the sun rose, I could feel the road pulling at me, could feel the geometry of the fields rearranging itself in my peripheral vision, could feel the burlap scratching at my awareness like a gentle reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be closed, and some harvests, once begun, can never be stopped. And some cyclists, once they start pedaling toward the horizon, will find that the horizon keeps pace with them, keeps pace until they arrive, until they are home, until they join the others in the eternal line, facing the same direction, waiting for the next one to come. And Dr. Chen doesn't understand, can't understand, will never understand why I have started keeping my bicycle in the living room instead of the garage, why I check the air pressure in my tires every morning before work, why I have begun researching routes through the eastern plains with an intensity that alarms my coworkers and confuses my few remaining friends. But I know, and soon everyone will know, soon the road will call, and I will answer, because that is what the road wants, that is what the thing in the farmhouse has always wanted. And I am so tired of fighting it, so tired of pretending that the pills and the therapy and the bright daylight hours mean anything against the patience of the scarecrows. And when I finally get back on the bike and pedal out toward the plains, I will not be afraid. I will be relieved. I will be going home. And the last thing I will see before the ground opens to receive me will be my own face staring back at me from 1,000 burlap masks, and I will wave goodbye to myself because the harvest must go on. The harvest must always go on, and the road is patient, and the road is kind, and the road knows exactly which direction we are all, in the end, headed.